welcome to Sketch Together. My name is Pablo Stanley, and on this session we're going to learn how to create a floating action button that bounces up and down on Framer. This is a speed dial from Material Design. It's a pattern from Material Design, and we're going to create the design and also code the prototype on Framer. Let's do it.
Okay, let's start by taking a peek at how our final prototype is going to look like. Here in the Design tab, you're going to see that this was designed on Framer, and on the code, this is how our interaction is going to look like. I tap on it, and then it bounces up and down, up and down. This interaction is based on the floating action button with a speed dial from Material Design. Let's see it here live. This is from material.io. You can see it here. It's not exactly how we're going to do it. We're taking it more as an inspiration. Something to notice is that we start by the final state. So we're going to design first our final state and then animate it back to the original one where this is closed. So I'm going to close this file and start from scratch. The first thing that I want to do is add an artboard. I'm going to add an iPhone 5, just a small screen, and then I'm going to start adding my icons. By the way, to add icons here on Framer, you can add icons from the library that they offer by default. So here I just press on the icons button, and then I can just start searching for different icons. So I'm going to start with an add button. So just the plus button. I'm going to add a camera. This camera will do. Looks really good. I'm going to add a video camera. This one looks good. And also a microphone. There you go. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now I have all of my icons, and I want to start adding the containers where my icons are going to be. And these are going to be different circles. So my icons by default, they're 24 pixels, all of them, and that's good. That's exactly what we wanted. If I wanted to change that, I could just go here to the size and change that. So I'm going to add a circle. For the first button here, for the plus button, I'm going to make it around there. Oh, perfect. Yeah, it should be 56 pixels. It's already 56. That's pretty good. I'm going to change the fill of it. First of all, I'm going to change it to 100%, and I'm going to make it a little bit a brighter blue, more saturated blue. There you go. Once I added the circle, automatically it created a component. I created a group because Framer said, oh, you want this circle to be the part of this plus button, and it created a group for me. So I double click, and then I am able to select this, and I can change the color of it, of the plus icon, to white. And now we have our fabulous button, or floating action button, which is called phat. Now I'm going to do the same for these icons. For those ones, I'm going to create another oval. I'm going to create the oval outside so it doesn't create a group first. And this one should be 40 pixels. I'm going to make it 40 pixels, and I'm going to change the fill to be white and 100% opacity. And I'm going to add a shadow just so I can see it. The shadow, I'm going to change it, instead of 25% opacity, I'm going to change it to 20%. I'm going to duplicate it around there, and I'm going to change the name of these. So this one is going to be my button 1. This should be my button 3, and this should be my button 2. And now I can put these icons inside. But before putting them there, I'm going to change the color of all of them. I want to change it to a nice blue around there. That should be a good blue. And now I'm going to put them, by putting them right there, now I created a group. So that's my first group. I'm going to do the same with this one. Now this is the group 2. Going to do the same with the microphone, and now I have all of them. Right now, I want to have around 8 pixels of, now probably 16 pixels. Let's see, 16 pixels between them. There you go. Now it's 16 pixels. I'm going to center all of these, and these should be also 16 pixels between this. So I'm going to say, there you go, 16 pixels. Now all of them are separated by 16 pixels, and I'm going to add also a shadow to this guy. So I'm going to add a shadow to this. Instead of 25%, I'm going to say it's 20% the opacity of the shadow. And now we have all of our elements ready. Now, all I have to do is add a target to them here on the layers list. So actually, I'm going to first change the order of them, just so they're order button 1, 2, 3. This one should be called phat, and this is the add icon. I'm going to call it add icon, just so it's it's not confused with the add code. So, and now I'm going to add just a target to all of them, to my buttons. This is a target, this is a target. So now button 1, 2, and 3 are a target, and I can use them on my code. The same with the phat, and I also want to add a target to the actual icon because I want to rotate it. And actually, my end state of this should be rotated to 45. We're going to learn that way it turns into a close button. On the initial state, it's going to be a plus, but since we're designing the end state, it should be a close. So since it's a close, it's rotated by 45 degrees, and now it looks like an X. Here on my code tab, you can see that now all of these targets, all of my layers that I created a target, now I can start adding animations, a state, or an event. So I actually want to add a state to the buttons. So I'm going to add a state by clicking here. I'm going to say add state. And I'm going to say that the state of this, it actually changes to opacity 0. So I'm going to change the opacity of this one. I'm going to change it to 10 so we can actually see it, just a change. And I'm also going to change the scale. So I'm going to say that the scale in the beginning is half of it, so 0.5. So right now, nothing's going on because I'm not triggering that animation, but we can see it here. We can see it here, and I can actually, if I wanted to, I could also change it over here, but we're not going to do that. I'm going to keep it like that. And something else that I want to do is also add that it moves like, I don't know, probably like 20 pixels from below. So what I can do is saying that the Y position changes by 20 pixels. But we want to take as reference the initial position. So what we do is actually say that Y equals button 1 dot Y plus 20. That way it will be the initial position plus 20. Just by clicking here, we can see that now it's a little bit below, and the opacity should now that I'm good, I'm actually going to change the opacity to 0. And now I can actually just copy this code and apply it to the rest of the buttons. So I'm going to actually just copy this. I'm going to press Command V, and I'm going to change this to button 2, this one to button 3, and then here on the Y, I also need to change this to be button 2 and over here to button 3. So now let's see it. See, this changed and this one changed. Okay, cool. So, and right now, all of these states are not being triggered by anything, but just for the sake of it, so we can actually test this, let's add an event that triggers this animation. So I'm going to add an event to the phat button. So I can click it and then creates the animations that cycles through the states of these other buttons. So I'm going to say that phat on click, going to add the dash and the chevron. I'm going to say that button 1 is, and I'm going to search for the state cycle action. So I'm going to say state cycle. Okay, so now it's ready. Now let's click it and test it. It's a little bit slow, but at least we can test it. Let's do the same for the other buttons. Okay, so I'm going to say, just going to copy the first line and paste it, and then I'm going to change this button 2 and button 3. Now, let's click it and test it. I probably want to change the animation options so these are actually a little bit faster. So, but I'm going to do that later. Right now, we're just testing the switching between the states. Okay, so we have the states for this. Now we need to add the states for our phat icon and the X. So I'm going to say that add icon. Remember, it was rotated by 45. Let's say that the state, and I'm going to also call it A, it equals rotation 0. So that way, let me click on it, and now it turns into a plus button. And let's add it here also on my trigger. So I'm going to say add icon, state cycle. And now let's switch between them. There you go. So now we're switching between the states. We're going to want to add animation options to this next. But before that, I actually want also the background of the button to change from a different blue to this other blue. So to add another state to the phat, I'm going to go here and I'm going to add another state here. And right here, I'm going to change the background color a bit. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to change it to a lighter blue. Around there, a little bit lighter. There you go. That should be good. And now I'm going to also add a state cycle here on my trigger for the phat button. So I'm going to just copy this, and instead of add icon, I'm going to say phat. And now let's switch, let's test it out. It goes from this blue to the other blue. From this blue, it rotates, and then all of these little buttons appear too. So now we have all of our states ready. Now we probably want to add animation options, so these are not as slow. Let's start by making them a little bit bouncy. So I'm going to go ahead and say button 1, states, animation options. I'm going to go over here, right here. I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to say that the curve is a spring. There you go. So let's test it. So see, this one now it's a spring, the camera. And I could probably apply this animation options to all of my buttons, but I actually want to add a delay to some of them. So I'm actually going to copy this, paste it, and I'm going to say here, just button 2, button 3. And now I'm going to start adding delays to these buttons. So the button 2, I'm going to add a delay of, I don't know, let's say 0.05. That way, this one will be first, and then this one will be second, and this one will be third with a little delay. So let's add a delay of 1.05, and to the button 3, let's add a delay of 0.1. So now let's test it. So now you see how they appear in cascade. This appears first, then this appears second, and this appears third. Now I'm going to do a trick. Here the button 1 has just a curved spring, and I actually can just reuse this animation option and apply it to my phat icon and to my X. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to say that this equals this. Hold on, I know this sounds a little bit crazy, but give me 1 second. So phat, I'm going to say that phat, actually the animation options of phat are the same as the ones from button 1. So that way, if I change the animation options of the button 1, then those will also be applied to the phat button. This way, I can just have my animation options in one place and reuse them in different places. I just say phat.states.animationOptions equals the one that I want to copy them. So it's button1.states.animationOptions. And I'm going to do the same with the plus button, so with the add icon. So I'm going to actually copy this whole line. I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to say add icon equals the same animation options from button 1. So now, see that. The animation options from this button are actually being copied to the phat button and to the X. There you go. So cool, right? Now, last thing that we want to do is if we reload this, it actually starts with this expanded. And that's not actually how it works. You want this to actually start from here. So what we can do is add a switch that just switches to this as the initial state. To do that, we need to add a piece of code that switches the initial state to the state A, to this states that we created over here. So to do that, I'm going to say button 1 states switch instant And then in parentheses, I'm going to say A. So there you go. Now you see it that it's disappeared because the initial state is going to be this state, the A state, where the opacity is 0 and is moving to the Y position of 20 pixels. So I'm going to do the same with all the rest of my elements. I'm going to copy paste this many times. And I'm going to change this to button 2, to button 3. This one should be my phat button. And this one should be my add icon. There you go. So now my initial state is this, where the buttons are not there and this is not open. So now that I click it, it switches to this one and then it switches back. It goes to this one and then it cycles back to the initial state. So that's it. We just finished. We just finished creating this amazing button. Look at it bounce. It's so cool. You can play around with the animation options. So you want it to be a little bit snappier. You can make it a little bit faster by adding time to it. I don't know, play around with the code and you make it your own. I'm going to add the file as a resource. Just look for it on the description. Look for a link to it and you can download it. And also on the comments, it would be great if you shared your own prototype. Remember that you can share it here on the cloud and then it gives you a link that you can share that link anywhere. So that's it for today. I hope you guys learned a lot. See you on the next one. Thank you.